And good morning, everybody, to the Dutch Mentor weekly roundtable discussion. Today's topic is going to be about leading through context, not control. As I live with soon to be 5 teenagers and older children, adult children, I've learned sometimes the hard way with them that certainly their generation doesn't do well with telling them what to do. And it really needs to be done through context. And context comes in many different ways. Sometimes it's monetary. Sometimes it's just convincing, but there's really, an understanding in healthcare more than anywhere else, I suppose, that as clinical people, including myself, having practiced as a paramedic and flight paramedic for 30 years, then having moved into hospital operations, I had to learn that, giving people direction is not the way to motivate or inspire people to get things done. And tactical people, you need to adapt to that, to a different style. It's not about at the bedside or the sense of urgency. It's about really establishing a vision and a communication model around that. So I would really appreciate hearing from each one of you, and I welcome Dennis today for joining the conversation, and I see Capri and Emily, Tim, welcome as well. And so, Dennis, since you're on my screen, why don't you give your perspective from many years in the hospital operations as a VP? On what that journey has been like for you around leading with context, not through control.
Well, thank you, Walter, for having me, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure to join you. Hopefully I can bring a few things to the table. I've been in healthcare administration for close to 35 years, and I've been blessed in pretty much overseeing just about every aspect of a hospital, if you will. Some of the take-home messages I have is it goes back quite some time. When we talk about directing somebody, I like to flip it and say enlightening them. I think motivating staff really gets down to, do they see the bigger picture? And our job, we've all read about servant leadership, et cetera, but our job as leaders is to really empower staff. And the way to empower any individual is to enlighten them as to what's the goal and then what's their role. A good example I like to give is in my most recent position, I had most of the support services, so a lot of logistics. And one of that was environmental services. So I'd go around pretty much every day, touring the floors, et cetera, and I'd ask the staff, so what is it that you do? Okay, when you go home at night and you talk to your family or loved ones, what do you tell them you do? And they say, well, we clean. And I would say, yes, you do, but go beyond that. What do you do? Oh, I don't know what you're talking about, Mr. Sheridan. You save lives. Whoa, this guy with the gray hair, he's lost it. What are you talking about here? No, you have a direct impact on people's lives, hospital-acquired infections, et cetera. So if you go that extra step every day, treating that patient as a person, perhaps a loved one, you really do make a difference. That's where the value comes in. And that's where I really think the opportunity for leadership is to meet the staff on their terms, to help them understand that they do matter. In a lot of these areas that I oversaw recently, I would say, you're not going to make $1 million throughout your career. We understand that. But if you really look for it, you'll have 1 million opportunities to make a difference. And when we ask folks, what'd you go into healthcare for? They always say, I want to make a difference. And then you ask them how, and you get the deer in headlights. So our job really is to enlighten and empower. And I think it's getting down to their level and showing appreciation.
Yeah, I think you said a couple things there that are really hitting home, right? Is managing by walking around, by actually going to see where the work takes place, and then having that conversation with that team member to see how they're really contributing. It is the same thing is that if you change a product that they have been used to on the ground to shine the floors for so many years, are they going to be responsible by just getting a new product or understanding why the new product is there? And that could be because of a cost reduction, right? Which could be relevant, or it could be more environmentally friendly. But I think the ownership model, people will buy into that much quicker if they understand the why behind it. So yeah, very well said, Dennis. So to get a little feedback from the rest of the team members, any perspective from your side, Tim, Emily, or Capri, on what that has been like in your roles of responsibility?
Yeah, I'll just add to that. Just by saying that, whenever I hear somebody say, put something in context, or it's sort of like, let's take a step back. And when you're working with a group of people, let's make sure that we're all on the same page with the vision and where we're going. So less control and more when you're working together with a group of people. People are speaking or thinking different things. And whenever I've been in work groups where it's, well, let's put this in context, Dennis, to what you were saying, put it in context to the bigger picture or more to the mission of where we want to go. I feel like always helps people. And when you say with work groups, let's put it into context, it's usually we take a pause and we sort of step back to say, what is the bigger picture? Where do we want to see things? And not only in operations, but as a former compliance officer, compliance has a role in many different aspects of the organization or the company, but you want to make it easy words to use and not complex words to use. So I think of that as another example where you want to try to make it legal ease or easier for people to understand. And then also maybe to what you were saying too, Dennis, and maybe Emily or Capri have other insight into that too, is to give them information or data around it so that environmental services folks understand this is the bigger picture. If you don't clean, we have these types of errors that might happen regarding infection control or other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good, Tim. I think that what rings a bell here is that storytelling at the level that your audience understands is really the key to success, right? It is that we need to find things that they can relate to and that are kind of sort of sticky, that stays with them. Interesting enough that incentives and rewards and recognition are often not the drivers to better outcomes. It's really understanding on the heart level on why I need to do it. And that can be done in many different ways. And storytelling is one of those. Emily or Capri, any insight from your perspective on that?
Yeah, so I would say in the positions that I've held, I've only been able to lead in this manner with having dotted line reports versus that other like more formal structure. So, and I do think you are able to get things done and in a more productive way when you can inspire people and kind of bring them in to a part of the process. And I think oftentimes in theory, we do a good job of saying that we're going to do those things, but I don't always see it come to fruition, especially in large systems. I'm thinking back to a project I had done years ago, and we actually did involve EVS, and we like went down to the basement where their offices were and like sat and talked with them, and they were like, nobody's ever come down here before. And just this idea that yes, having the connection to mission is key, but then I also think really bringing folks into the problem solving process and letting them be a part of the solution, because it allows them to take ownership of that. And I see that as a really key component of servant leadership and, you know, kind of breaking that command and control process.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because the subject matter experts are often the people who are doing the work. And when they are told to do something and we're not part of that decision matrix, it becomes just another impediment to success, right? It is, and that's why I really believe in the shared governance model. That's something that obviously came out of the magnet certification structure in nursing, where there's a requirement on the end of the day that people from top down, bottom up are part of the governance and the policy procedure direction of the organization. So they all feel that they have some input into the mix itself. Now, regulatory requirements are something separate, right? That's one of those things. Does anybody have any stories that they can share about working for somebody who was purely directive, who would just tell people what to do without context behind it, and what that felt like, and you know, the lessons learned from that, and how you will lead differently because of it?
Yeah, I could think of, oh, Emily looks like she's talking.
I'm talking, but I muted myself. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Emily.
Yeah.
Having just transitioned in roles from something very much what experiencing what Capri is going through in terms of dotted line reporting to a department that was very much led by a driver, as we'll put it, was a whiplash of an experience. Not while employee engagement was being touted in that particular department as we want to be an engaged department, it was very much, this is what you will do, this is what you are doing today, this is what's expected of you. And the information for the larger goal was not shared. So at any given moment, a directive to complete a task never was mission centered. And it never rang true to myself to say, okay, well, you've asked me to do this. Who am I contributing to? Why? It's why I went into healthcare. There's an end user at the end of the day that I know is experiencing the product. And when you don't have that context, it was very disconcerting. And despite an engaged department, it was the least engaged I had felt at any point. It was a very different experience. I would like to share, just going back for a second for your prior question, the first hospital that I worked at, the expectation when you walked in the door is you said hi to whoever's in front of you when you first walk in the door. Doesn't matter who, you said hello. And if you were lost or somebody looked lost, you walked them to wherever they needed. Now you can't do that in like I was working in Montefiore. You can't do that in Montefiore. Otherwise you'd be walking halfway across the Bronx. But in the community hospital, it was certainly possible. And the end result of that was senior leadership would work with new hires to walk them to wherever they go. And the most important person in the organization is EVS, who Barry makes the coffee every day. And we all know Barry. And coffee is made right outside senior leadership. So when senior leaders meet, there's coffee right outside. And because of the their encouragement to say hello, everyone in EVS, well, importantly Barry, because he's right there, but is incorporated in that. And that expectation is a very different expectation than when somebody is a driver in that role and there's a disenfranchisement.
Interesting. By the way, congratulations, Emily, on your recent graduation with your PhD. It is phenomenal work and certainly a capstone of a capstone. You should smile brightly because of that. Yeah, listen, what I'm hearing is that when you're working for somebody who is directive and fails, the mission of explaining the why, it is really important that we put ourselves in a position to ask for the why and not just take the direction, right? So it's important as both leaders, as well as, at times we work for people, we have to be followers, to have the confidence to ask why this is important. So you kind of, force that question to be answered. Dennis, yeah, go ahead.
Even if one does ask why, it's important as a leader to expect the question and expect to respond.
Yes.
And you mentioned parenting earlier, Walter, because is not a sufficient answer for adults. Mm-hmm. It just doesn't do the trick. So not only to put person in a position where asking why is acceptable, but creating a safe space where asking why is encouraged.
100% correct. Dennis, any reflection on the conversation so far?
A lot of reflections, and it'll be very brief. I think this is awesome, to be honest with you, because we're all singing pretty much the same song, coming at it from different angles. One thing that jumped out as you were all speaking was the difference when you talk about motivating somebody who needs to do something versus who wants to do something. And the why is really the key to get to the want. And the examples you all raised, I think we've all lived it time and time again. If we've got a directive type of superior, we as leaders still have to guard it doesn't go through us and go down to those we are responsible for. And the other thing I think Emily said very well is we have to create a safe space where people are comfortable asking why. Very often they're not. They're scared, they're intimidated, I'm stupid, whatever you want to say. And then they harbor that. And there's no way you can motivate somebody to go to the next level when they've got that all internalized. So why is critical, but creating the environment where the answer to the why can come out, maybe even more so.
Yeah, very, very well said. Capri or Tim?
Yeah, I was just gonna, it was sort of touched on that, Emily, your story about the new employee who comes on and the executive leader walking them around. It reminds me that we kind of, at the point of bringing people into an organization or a company, we don't focus on some of these things at the point of orientation or even carrying it through. They get the 1 or 2 day orientation, they're jumped right into a position that they now have to navigate and that they're paid for, and that there's expectations there. And so that then doesn't continue. So if we almost have to start it from that beginning and include it in a level of orientation, and then if middle managers hear all that and it's a part of the organizational structure, sort of that context, the understanding the why, it then would carry the employee through their first 90 days, and they would hopefully pick up on it and carry it through in those 90 days and beyond their career. And sometimes I think it's lost then at the point of a new employee coming on board, some of these aspects. Yeah,
it's funny you say, because it's almost like drinking from a fire hydrant, right? Especially as you come into an organization, there's so much thrown at you, it's impossible to retain any of it or much of it, right? It probably 80-90% of it is lost. Yeah, so you hear me talk a lot about behaviors, right? It is the behavior that often stands in the way of performance, and leading with the why and leading through context is an essential piece of servant leadership. We also have to remember that if we explain the why, that does not mean that they get it on the first try. Right, so there's a technique that we use in medicine that read, back, and verify when you get verbal orders. There's a technique in leadership called, ask, tell, ask. Is that you really, once you explain the why, take a few minutes to ask them what they just heard. Did they process this information and what it is that they got out of that, and listen back to what it is that they heard. And only at that point in time can you make a connection. Did they really get the message? Did they really understand the why at the heart level, at the emotional level, at the behavior level? So they can then carry that forward or help, tell the story, or communicate that forward to the rest of the team. If you find there is a gap, this is your opportunity to go back and to restate it, and maybe use even different words to help convey the message. But go back and forth until you feel comfortable that they have it, they got it, and have the ability to communicate it out. Scripting, although unnatural often, is something that could help people when you write things down and you have this dialogue going back and forth. Very good. Dennis or Capri, any other feedback, any insight on that from your perspectives?
Capri, you can go first. I have a thought.
Sure. I just wanted to add that I think stating the why is really important. I think actions speak louder than words, and leadership actually exemplifying the why is the most important. So like what Emily was saying about how leaders would actually walk, patients or somebody who was lost around the hospital. I think it's very easy. I mean, leaders are busy. There's lots of meetings, there's lots of things going on. But I think if you're kind of making these messages, but your actions aren't showing it, you're not showing up where the work is being done, I don't think that those who are boots on the ground take it as seriously.
Thank you, Capri. Dennis?
I would piggyback on that very comment that it's not just walking around. I started a campaign at Winthrop years ago called the My House campaign, and it's similar to what you heard with the Homeland Security. If you see something, say something. This was, if you see something, do something. And it goes as simple as that piece of paper on the floor in the lobby is not environmental services responsibility. This is our house. That lost patient or family coming in is not patient relations responsibility. It's ours. That staff member who seems to be in a little bit of distress right now for whatever reason, he or she is one of ours. There's a responsibility there. And then to pick up on what Tim said about orientation, I couldn't agree more. And I also see, unfortunately, over time, as we've gotten bigger and bigger with our systems, we've spent less and less time personally delivering orientation for our new employees. A lot of it is now done by video. And it's a day and a half, whatever it is. And then we expect the department to do a departmental orientation. And hopefully they get it. I think that's a challenge. I really do. Unfortunately, well, I'll say fortunately, I had a model for environmental services, and as the VP for their big deal, but they would see me. I would actually, their first day in the department, get a bunch of them. I would put them in a mock-up of a patient room in a patient bed. I would actually ask them, fully dressed, to get in bed. And we then told them, play patient. And I'm going to be the hospitality worker or somebody else. What do you see? What do you observe? And trying to get them to understand that that patient is really captive to their room. And in some ways, we're their entertainment for the day. Coming in, how are you today? What's happening? I heard about the grandchildren. While you're cleaning, I really do care about you. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, making that personal connection. And by the way, these are not people with a lot of letters behind their name.
Mhm.
They're just people taking care of people. But they develop self-worth then. Now they get the reason why. Now they want to do their job. They're proud of it versus being told what to do. So to Tim's point on the orientation, we probably need to take a better look at that as an industry and how we do it. And as far as the day-to-day leadership, you really, Walter, we spoke a little bit about the up and coming leaders and something they need. They've got all the academics. They've been well prepared. They know data analytics like I could never. But this business is about people. You can't hide behind that computer all day. You got to be out on the floor seeing what's going on. And then you will get to the why. And to Emily's point, you will be in the environment when they ask the why.
It is
So-
funny. It's funny you say that. You make me laugh because we always said that at one of my hospitals that if you ever want to fix throughput in the emergency department into the inpatient, all you need to do is take all the chairs of the different departments and put them in an ER bed on an ER mattress in the hallway, and you will see how quickly we can fix throughput issues.
True.
It is absolutely true. Okay, what I'm going to do, we have a couple minutes left. I would love to have a finishing thought from each. Then I'll stop the recording and I'll have a couple words after that, if you don't mind. All right, Capri, why don't you take the last words of wisdom as we depart?
Sure. So something that all this has made me think about in discussing orientation is well, first, I think some organizations, what they do successfully is that they assign somebody a mentor when they're new to the organization. And that should not be somebody in their department. It should be a leader at a higher level than them that they continue to go to as a resource to kind of build a connection. And then I think we seem to, in a lot of healthcare organizations and we put a lot of resources into like getting folks in and onboarding them. And then once they're there, things get kind of stagnant. And I think a big focus needs to be on what professional development, what skills, what tools can we continue to provide employees once they're in the organization, because people want to feel that they're making an impact. They want to feel that they can grow and develop. And I think it's really key to provide that to them once they're already in the door.
Very, very good. I think mentoring and coaching for success are vitally important for long-term, behavior changes and exceeding expectations. Thank you, Capri, for that input. Emily.
I'm having flashbacks to growing up and my dad sitting with me on the front porch, and I'd find myself agreeing with him. Like, of course. Like, wait a minute, that wasn't my idea. Oh, wait, it was my idea. Wait, was that really my idea? So what I think my takeaway is there's two whys. There's a why for an organization or a why for any individual. So what is, as a leader, what's the leader's why? And as a provider or an employee, what's my own individual why? And are they aligned? And usually a simple question was, so this is what I see you doing today. How's that going to get you where you want to go? Oh. So I'm not sure it's a pearl of wisdom, but I think I am taking away for the moment alignment of whys and hearing two different whys, ensuring there's a why of a leadership and a why from the individual. And that there's at least, I'm putting a round number on it, 80% commonality, where you're willing to work together to get towards a single goal while you're still meeting your individual goals.
Yeah, unification of the vision is very, very important. Thank you, Emily, for that. Tim.
Yeah, I'll add one or two quick things. In getting my bachelor's degree, I got a minor in management. And there were four things that they spoke about as managers: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. So there are aspects of our jobs that we do need to control, but I would put a spin on it and say that control, to use it more positively, it's always a negative connotation, but how can frontline staff, middle managers control in a positive way their department, their people to move forward and be in alignment with the larger organization? So to put a positive spin on control and put it in context that way. And then I would also add, we spoke about environmental services and going to people and rounding. A CEO of a current hospital, part of a larger hospital system here in New York, once said, and I gave him that feedback because I'd always remembered it from him. He had said in a session to make sure that you always round on people from the midnight to 8 a.m. shift, or that sort of tour 3, or whatever you want to call it. Make sure you do the late night shifts, because they matter too. And that's important to make sure that you make an impact for them as well.
Yeah, I think that could be a whole topic of another discussion, running a 24-hour hospital, 8 hours at a time. And there's a lot of loaded comments into that. And that's something that has not really been addressed by the industry as of yet. But thank you, Tim, for the insightful comments. Dennis, any parting thoughts?
I think to wrap it up, we probably all have the same philosophy on leadership, and that is that, trust is earned. It's based on integrity. It takes time. And the only way to establish that is to really know your own why. And that's where we all start. What is my why? Why am I doing this? And then communicating, as we said, down to our staff. And as we said before, aligning the two whys. I couldn't agree more. You have to start with yourself. But then if you're going to lead others, you need to understand where they're coming from. And with that alignment, you're fine. And then, by the way, it starts all over again tomorrow. You're never successful. It's always going to change the next day. That's the coolest part about healthcare. There's never 2 days that are the same.
Yeah, that's correct. And it is part of the reason why I say is that, we need to learn to relate to each other, not compare.
Yes.
And if you find there's much more to relate from top to bottom than there, if I sit there comparing and build up resentment. So, all right. So we're at the end of the half an hour. It was a really fantastic conversation today, a good roundtable, and we're building every week and gaining momentum. Invite some more folks. We're going to post this online for others to view in the future. Thank you. And I'm going to end the conversation, the recording at this time.